Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the volume profile, and this is an indicator that I get asked about a lot. It's not just an indicator, it's used in all kinds of things. But let's go ahead and first take a look at two examples that are probably the most common ways that we see a volume profile used. Each day has its own profile, which is kind of nice when you're trying to individually understand what's happening on a day-to-day basis. And here is 10 days with one single volume profile. In this picture, the profile in green is looking at all 10 days, and it's putting all of the volume together into one single profile. Here, each day is broken down individually and has its own profile. On this one, the profile is laying on top of the candles. And it doesn't have to. I'm going to go in here for a moment and turn off the TPO. And we're going to set the profile on the right-hand side. So now here in green, on the right side, that's the volume profile. But it's the same thing. I didn't do anything different as far as what it's calculating. It's still calculating 10 days of volume with each candle, 30 minutes. All right, so whether I have it all the way to the right like this, or we put it back where it was, it's still doing the same thing. It's still reading the same data, and nothing has changed in there other than the way that it looks, right? You could imagine that if you were trying to, say, trade, or you had this within a grid of a lot of different charts, it might be hard to read when price is mixed inside the indicator. So by setting it off to the right side, we can separate the image of the volume profile from the candles, but it wouldn't change what it's doing or what it's reading. So that's a visual introduction to the volume profile. What I wanted to do first is explain how to set the profile up so that if you want it to do this, where each day gets its own profile, or if you want it to do this, where it's measuring all of the days in a single profile and it's overlaid on the candles, or if you want it to do this, which is where it's measuring 10 days or as many days as you want it to measure, but it's putting the profile on the side and not laying on top of the candles. That's the three things that I first want to discuss. So we want to go up to the beaker and we want to add a volume profile. And this is the default Thinkorswim volume profile. Okay, I didn't make any changes yet. Some of the things that I want to point out is that there is a red line here, and that's the POC. It's the point of control. That's where the greatest amount of volume took place. Then there are the two yellow lines, and that is the value area high and the value area low. So VAL and VAH. Inside of the value area high and the value area low is a 1 SD. That is a 1 standard deviation. Now, standard deviation gets us into bell curve statistics and mathematical computations, and we really don't want to go down that road, right? We're going to just use simple concepts, and we'll say that a 1 SD equals 70% of all of the volume. And technically, I'm rounding a little bit, but that's close enough. So in between the value area high and the value area low is where 70% of all of the volume took place. The POC is where the greatest amount of volume took place. So if that's where the most volume is at, we can then see how much there was between the value area high and the point of control, and the point of control down to the value area low. And here, for an example, if the 1SD is 70%, visually speaking, this looks like it could be 20% of that 70, and this might be 50% of that 70. And we put the two together and we say 70% of all of the volume was right there. All right. Outside of the value area high and the value area low is the other 30%. And from that, all combined, we would have 100% of all of the volume for the chart that we're looking at. Some of the visual effects that we can change is the clouded area back here where it's in gold. We can change this channel where the volume point of control is, and we can change the color of the volume bars in cyan, and we can change the value area high and low, the yellow lines, and then the color of the point of control, which for me is a red line. We can also lay this on top of the candles rather than having it on the right side. And we can change how much candles we look at. We can also add the absolute high and the absolute low with this indicator, right? So we could actually add that in there instead of using my drawings, which I have. We'll turn those off. So let's open the indicator and discuss a few things. The first thing on the list is it's asking how high do we want each row to be. And a row, if we come in and zoom in here a little bit, every one of these volume bars is a row. All right, so you can see the row is kind of thick. It's this right there. That's a row. And here's a row. They kind of stand out a little bit when we catch one all by itself, right? And the first thing the indicator is asking is, how big do we want these rows? These rows look kind of big. All right, so if you look at how wide these are, they're really big. And it's asking, is that how wide you want that to be? The default automatic setting seems to be about 50 cents. I like to use tick size. Now, every product has a tick, okay? Futures, can have 25-cent ticks or 10-cent ticks. Equity products like Target, Apple, SPY, Amazon, they have 1 penny ticks. So when we tell this volume profile that we want to make every one of those bars the size of a tick, on Target, every one of those bars is going to be 1 penny wide. That's a much skinnier profile, right? Every one of those bars are going to be a lot tinier than they would have been. Now, you can set your own tick size. It allows you to go into custom. If you did choose custom and you wanted to set your own size, the next spot is where you would do that. All right, so if you put it on custom, you can then come in and you can make it whatever size you want. But I recommend just setting it on tick size, because you very likely are not going to do a better job than the machine can do. All right, and it's better to just let the machine do it itself. But if you ever have a particular reason to want to make the bars a little thicker, that would be how you could do it. Or thinner, right? If you wanted to make them thinner. The next thing here is time per profile. And currently I've got it set to chart. Now what it's asking is, how much do you want the volume profile to read? Okay. In this particular instance, I want it to read every candle that I have. and I'm on a 3-month chart. But let's back it out and let's look at a 1-year chart. But what if I didn't want to read the whole year and I didn't want to make the chart smaller? I still wanted to see 1 year of candles. I just didn't want to read 1 year of candles. So we can go in and we can tell this to only look at a day, for an example. Now it's only looking at the last trading day. We could tell it to go in and look at a week. And now it's looking at 1 week of trading, the last 5 days. Now the multiplier comes right back to the profile. We're looking at 1 week. But what if I wanted 8 weeks? That's 2 market months. Now the profile is counting back the days until we have 8 weeks worth. And again, I get to keep all of my candles that I wanted to see, 1 year of candle data, and I can just tell the profile to only pay attention to the last 2 months. You're not always going to know what the profile is going to show you until you make the change in the settings and just go look at the chart. And if the chart doesn't show you what you want, just come back in and make a change to the settings. You now know, because we just covered it, what the price per row height mode is going to do for you, right? It's going to allow you to adjust your tick size or the size of these bars. And you know that you can ignore custom row height if you're going to use a preset thing like tick size. And we've also learned that you can choose to cover the entire chart, or that you can cover just a particular area on the chart. And that if you do choose a particular area of the chart, then you need, or you can also tell it how many of those areas you want. So if we're going to use something like a day, we can do 20 days, or we can do something like a week, and we can do as many weeks as we want. Now, the next thing that it's asking is, do you want this on expansion? And that basically is asking, do you want it on the right side of the chart, or do you want it to overlay on the candles like we do here? We can cover all of the price action, or we cover all of the price action on the right side of the chart, or we can cover all of the price action laying on top of the price action itself. Okay, like that. From here, if you wanted to change things, say you want it on top of the candles, but you also want it to cover a day by day or a week by week or a month by month, then you can come in and choose to do that. Here is 10 months in that volume profile. And then here is a new volume profile, and it's just begun the count all over again. All right. So this is the first month from 8 to 9, and then from 9 to 10, that's your second month. So it's 2 months in to a 10-month profile, and just started. Because remember, this is a 1-year chart, and we can see, all right, here's November, and then December, and then of course January, February, all the way up to August, which is 8, 9, 10. So that's 10 months in one volume profile. And now the count has started over, and we've got 2 months into this new profile. All right. So you can see by making adjustments to the volume profile settings here on the multiplier, we multiply whatever profile time we picked. If we had gone with weeks and say we wanted 50 weeks per profile, now all of this is 50 weeks, and we've started over with that much data for a new 50 weeks. And here's the thing. If we kick this off to the right, where it says on expansion, if we say yes, now it's only showing us that new profile and it's not showing us that old profile. It's not recording it. It's not counting it, right? And that's important to understand, that it's not getting that. So if you want to get all of it, then you would want to turn it off and set it to chart mode so that it'll get everything. And one setup that I see is really popular is when each day has its own volume profile. Right now, we've got it on the right side, and it's looking at all of the days on my chart. If we want each day to have its own profile, then we need to come in and tell this that the profile should be daily, and we cannot have it on expansion if we want to have each profile daily. Unfortunately, we can't do that. On other platforms, we can, but not on Thinkorswim. And then for how many profiles? Well, first we got to put the multiplier back to 1 because we want each day to have its own profile. So just one multiplier. For the profiles, I've only got 7 days showing, so we could leave it set to 1,000, but we don't have 1,000 days showing, right? So we could put in our own number, say 10 or 8, or we don't even need to change it. The cool thing is I have 7 days showing, but maybe I only want to do 3 days of profile. And there we can see that I have 3 days of profile. Or we could do, 5 days of profile. And now just the last 5, and we didn't get these 2 on the end. If we left it at 1,000 and had not changed anything, then it would get all 7, but of course only 7 because that's how many days we have. All right, so that's how you set it up if you want each day to have its own profile. Now, unfortunately, if you do it this way, the profile is on top of the candles. And I know that that kind of sucks, but that's just the way that it is. There's really nothing that we can do about that. On other platforms, it will often give you the chance to set it on the right side, and it would still be just for that day. And then, set it on the right side again, and it would just be for that day. And that's pretty cool. That way you can have it off out of the way of the candles and on expansion like that. But we can't do that on Thinkorswim. So hopefully that kind of explains the different ways that you can set the profile on the candles or on the right side, and then day by day or all of the days all at once. So here you can see that we've got all of the price action from its highest point to its lowest point. And the setting that we used is still counting the days using the multiplier. Because it's the weekend, if I try to just do 2 days or 3 days or something like that, it's not counting the number back the way it should. I wouldn't get too hung up on it though, right? Now we've had the discussion, and we've now discussed, or we've now covered what those settings are. The next thing that we want to cover is showing the point of control. So if I zoom in here, we can see that the point of control looks a little bit like a channel. It's got this wide space, right? And the numbers are red. It's got this red cloud back here, and it kind of fades as we get closer to the number. So that's showing the point of control. If we turn that off, we can see that that red line is still there. So what's up? We just turned it off, right? Well, look, when we zoom in now, there's no longer a gap, and there's no longer red volume marked out, and there's no longer that red cloud. So it's gone. It's not showing that point of control anymore. it still has the point of control line, and it still has the point of control price bubble, but it no longer is showing that little channel and the red cloud. So whether you turn it on or off, you're still going to have that red line unless you turn that off in a different part of the indicator. So it's just a visual representation, right? It's just this little channel right there. That's all you're turning on and off. But at least now you know that that's what you're turning on and off, right? Now the next thing is show the value area. And I'm going to turn that off for a moment. Notice how the cloud went away. We'll turn that back on, and now it's back again. So the value area is just all of this area in gold. But the high and the low of that value area, it didn't turn off. It stayed there. So when you turn on or you turn off the value area, you're really just turning on and off that shaded cloud. That's all. So let's turn it back on. And now it's asking, how big do you want your value area to be? The default setting is 1 standard deviation, rounded up to 70. That's very normal, and you want to kind of leave that there. There's no reason to ever change that. If you did want to change something, you could dial it in and make it more specific. A real 1 standard deviation is 68.27. This has been rounded to 70, and that's fine. It doesn't hurt anything. And I don't really recommend that you change it, but just for the video, we're going to make it 85. And now you can see that the value area got a lot bigger. And we can make it 95. And now we've got just about all of the volume. And if we make it 100%, then we do have from the highest point to the lowest point, all of the volume. But we don't want to do that. We want to leave it at its default setting of 70. The next thing it's asking is, how bright do you want it to be, and how easy to see through do you want it to be? Since we're on the right side of the chart, we're not really going to cover up any candles if we make this thing dark or bright. All right, so you can see how I really brightened it up, and it makes it easier to see, but it doesn't really interact with anything. It's not a problem for us. But what if we were on top of the candles? Notice how hard it is to see those candles now. Everything is so sharp and bright, and just it's difficult. So we can perhaps go the other way and make it much easier on our eyes. Now it's still there, but it's more translucent. We can see through it a lot easier. It's not so bright. So opacity is our ability to make it transparent or not, brighter or not so bright. Okay, so now you've covered all of the inputs on how to adjust this thing. Now let's talk about what it's plotting on your chart. So the POC, that's the red line down there. One thing that I like to do is make that red line easier to see, right? So I just make it wider. I always leave mine red, but you can set yours to whatever you want. The point of control is where the greatest amount of volume took place. Volume by price. Okay. Then we've got the profile high and the profile low. Now these are turned off by default, and they're going to mark the very highest point on the chart and the very lowest point on the chart. To me, I don't need those, right? I usually have things like open, high, low, close, and other things that mark that for me. But you could, if you wanted to, especially if you're nesting this thing on top of different days, right? So if we were to go back into this 5-day, 5-minute, and we were to set it up to every day having its own profile, and we want it off of expansion, time per profile day, multiplier 0, profiles 7. There we go. Now each day has its own profile, and we could add to that. See how it's not marking the highest point or the lowest point? Well, we could go in and we can turn those on. And now it's marking the highest point of that day and the lowest point of that day. The last two is the value area high and the value area low. That's the yellow line here and the yellow line there. So the indicator gives you a chance to change those, make them wider or thicker, and then change their color, turn the lines on and off. And then the last thing here are the globals. It's where you can change the cloud color. If you remember when we turned the point of control on and off, it had that channel and it had the red cloud inside that channel. Well, it doesn't have to be a red cloud. It could be whatever color we want. And then looking at the profile here, you can see this cyan colored cloud. Well, we could change that cloud color. And then the gold area between the value area high and the value area low, we can change that cloud color by using the globals here. So now you know all of the settings that you can change and how to adjust it to show you what it is that you're looking for. And now that we've done all that, let's go back to the charts that I show every day in the morning briefing. All right, so we want to turn on my volume profile, the 10-day, 30-minute, as I show it in the morning briefing every day. Now, I still haven't got to the TPO, and that may end up being in a separate video. What we want to talk about is, what are we looking at here? Well, we got the value area high in yellow. We got the point of control in red, and then we've got the value area low in yellow. And inside of that, we've got the green volume bars, and that is our profile measuring 10 days on a 30-minute candle. On the other chart that I use all the time is my 5-day, 5-minute volume profile, and each one of these days has its own profile. When it comes to trading, or when it comes to using volume profile, not everybody trades with this thing, right? Like me, I don't use it to get in or get out of the market. I don't use it to trade. I use it to analyze things. If you were going to use it in your trading, it would very likely be from two different approaches. One approach would be taking yesterday's levels and plotting them on today's price. And then if we interacted with those levels, that would perhaps be a trade opportunity. So that's one way to approach trading with volume profiles. It's by using whatever happened yesterday and plotting that forward, right? Simple, simple. The other way that a volume profile is used to trade is by looking at whatever is happening in today's volume. Through the day, you've got price moving around, doing whatever, and it's growing these profiles as the market is moving, right? So the farther we ran up here and then we paused and we consolidated, a trader would be watching for the live profile to be going on right now, right then and there. So during the trading day, you can use today's volume, but I gotta say it's not something that I've ever really been comfortable doing. What I like better is projecting yesterday's volume levels onto today's chart and then anticipating or responding to how price reacted at those levels. I find that more valuable. It still doesn't mean I trade with the indicator. I would not do that. I don't get in or get out because of the volume profile, but I do anticipate price reacting to certain levels, like the point of control. So on Friday morning, during the morning briefing, we had not yet made this run up here, and we had an untouched point of control. It was right there. It was untouched because we had not yet run back up to that level and hit it. When we did run back up there and hit it, there was an expectation that there would be a response out of the market. Right? So there's the level that I marked Friday morning during the morning briefing. And as we can see, in the first 5 minutes, we got there. It ran up and it hit it and pulled back away from it. Then it ran back up and it hit it again. And then we broke through it. And from then on, we crisscrossed it a few times and it was done. It was over with. But it's important to realize that that's where we got to, right? And if we were opening up and we seen price moving in that direction, you got to kind of ask, like, well, where are we going? Are we going to get to the volume profile and yesterday's volume profile? And if we get there, are we going to make it through it in the first shot? So there's a trade called the first touch that we get there and we bounce off of it. And a lot of times, if it was going to dump, it would get there and bounce off of it, and that'd be the end of it. We'd be done. So the fact that we got there and we didn't dump kind of implied that maybe we were going to work around this level and work through it. But you can see how price was working through that level. It was spending time there working on it. So the point of control from yesterday is something that I like to plot and bring forward as long as it has not been hit yet. And we call that a VPOC. It's a virgin point of control. Virgin being that it hasn't been touched yet. Once it's been hit, then it loses its validity or value, and we don't need it anymore. You can see that I have an old VPOC sitting up around 4,000. And until we go up and we interact with that line is going to stay on my chart. This one, we no longer need it. It's the one that I drew Friday because, well, on Friday, we came up and hit it and interacted with it, and we're done with it now. So value area high, value area low, and point of control. Those are things that you can plot forward onto today's price. But I really don't get a lot of value in plotting the value area high and low. It's what is taught, though. If you were to go and study and read books and learn about the volume profile even more, you'll hear a lot of authors or publishers discuss carrying those forward. I really just don't get any value out of that, so I don't do it. But you certainly could. Most often, you'll have to do that by hand, right? Just use your line tool, go in and plot them over. But again, I don't do that. So now you have a much greater understanding of the volume profile, how to overlay it on the candles or put it to the right of the candles, what the VPOC is, what the POC is, value area high, which is VAL, VAH, POC, all these acronyms, right? And you know how to adjust the settings. You can't get this wrong, okay? So if you go in and you change a bunch of things and you can't remember what you changed, just take it off of your chart and then add it back into the chart again, right? And when you do that, it'll be back to its default settings. Hopefully this video has really highlighted your understanding, right, of the volume profile, and that you are more comfortable with making changes to it and adjusting it. We don't really have time left to discuss how we could use it in trading, and I'll end up doing another video for that.